All right, so let's talk a little bit about market opportunity analyses and marketing strategy and how they fit together and how they rely on each other. Well, when do you do a market opportunity analysis? Well, market opportunity analyses are critical whenever a company is considering entering a new market. However, even if a new market isn't being considered, companies should continuously be monitoring and analyzing their current market for new opportunities and, of course, new threats. And all of that is part of the market opportunity analysis. We need to be looking for new ideas and new ways to increase or maintain our revenue and market share levels, or enter new markets to do the same thing. Now, market opportunity analysis is a critical exercise when companies are trying to decide whether or not to enter a new market. And that's usually when we think about a market opportunity analysis, or perhaps to exit markets that they're already in. This involves studying the size of the market, the competition, and the potential for success, along with customers and the macro environment in which we're operating. Doing a market opportunity analysis is an essential part of doing business and can help all companies achieve greater success in new and existing markets. The benefits of doing a market opportunity analysis, well, there's lots of them, but let's talk about a couple of them. It increases the chances of success in new markets. It also creates a better understanding of the competition and your customers. It has the ability to identify potential opportunities and threats that might be coming along. You gain greater clarity of the company's strengths and weaknesses. You learn about your customers. And knowing your customers is one of the best things you can do to be successful in any business. And it provides input to improve your decision making regarding marketing decisions. So there are three basic types of MOAs that we might talk about and we might be involved in, and you might be involved in at some point in time. All right, and the first one, of course, is idea exploration MOAs. This is an example of this is when you're trying to generate new revenues for the Thomas and Mack. We one time got involved in a project with the Thomas and Mack Center for taking their parking lots and generating revenue in their parking lots. And of course, this was before we had the giant parking structure for students in the parking lot, and we were looking for ways to generate revenue. We actually held the San Gennaro Feast there a couple of years in a row. We used some of the parking lot as storage for car rental companies. And we also had proposed and prepared a marketing plan and a market opportunity analysis to turn the Thomas and Mack parking lot into a swap meet on the weekends, much like they do at some of the big parking lots in some place like San Diego. So this is the idea of exploration. Figure out ways to generate more revenue for an organization. Another one might be idea exploration and reevaluation, increase or change the business. An example of this would be a project that we got involved in a few years ago with the local people who are responsible for the PGA golf tournament here in Las Vegas, which is now called the Shriners Children's Golf Tournament. And the sponsor is the Shriners, and we have a local committee that looks at trying to increase the successfulness of this tournament. And of course, when they talk about successfulness of the tournament from a local perspective, it typically revolves around increasing the attendance at the event by both tourists and locals. And then, of course, there's another type of an MOA, which is idea evaluation. This is whether or not we should do something. So an example would be, a friend of mine had the idea of putting in a Polish restaurant in Summerlin. Is that a good idea or not? Not too long ago, a friend of mine came up with the idea of having a children's only barbershop. Is that a good idea or not? And of course, the answer to that can be found by conducting a market opportunity analysis. So these are three types of MOAs that we see a lot of, and we actually see all kinds. One of the nice things about being involved in MOAs is that no two market opportunity analyses are exactly the same. They have many of the same elements, but every one is a little different in its terms of what's expected, what's needed, what opportunities and threats exist, what the strengths and weaknesses are of each organization. So every MOA is a little different from every other MOA. It helps keep the whole thing more fun because you're not doing the same thing over and over again. Some of the examples of market opportunity analysis that myself and some of my students have been involved in over the years, and also our consulting company. And so some of those include things like Henderson was interested in a space and science center. We did the market opportunity analysis for that. The Fremont Street Experience, which you're all familiar with, they did a big renovation of the Fremont Street Experience about 10 or 15 years ago, and we were heavily involved in that. The East Fremont Street Project, that you are familiar with, the East Fremont Street Project that now includes the Container Park and Ferguson's and all those sorts of places down there on the east end of Fremont Street. The North Las Vegas Entertainment District. North Las Vegas wanted to create an entertainment district that was a very similar to that one that had already been started and had some level of success for the city of Las Vegas on their East Fremont Street project. North Las Vegas wanted to do the same thing. We did a project for the downtown Henderson Entertainment District. We did a project for the Lynx Auto Museum. The Link had an auto museum. They were thinking about what to try to do with it. We did a market opportunity analysis for them. At the end of the day, they decided that space was better used for something other than an auto museum. We did a big project with John Tippins and the people at Tivoli Village. So many of you that live on the west side are familiar with Tivoli Village. They were looking at opportunities to increase revenues and make that particular mall destination more successful. We did some of the background work for the LVCVA and other organizations for Major League Baseball coming to Las Vegas just a year and a half ago, with the A's or some other expansion team that might come to Las Vegas, and we did the numbers and looked at the market opportunity analysis associated with this. As you're familiar with this now, the A's are coming to town and they're building a stadium on the corner of Tropicana and the Strip. Some other examples: we did a project trying to figure out ways of increasing revenues for Brookfield Zoo in Chicago. It's a consulting job. We did a consulting job increasing attendance at Nevada State Parks. We did, as I mentioned before, the Las Vegas PGA Tour Stop, increasing attendance at the PGA Golf Tournament that is held here annually up at TPC Summerlin. I did a multi-year project with the National Hot Rod Association, trying to figure out ways to create more fan support and attendance and interest in the National Hot Rod Association. And we've even done things like the Nevada Conservatory Theater, which is a theater housed on campus, which is a place for aspiring actors and to get and directors to get experience and their union cards. So there's just a handful of different examples of the kinds of things that might require some sort of a market opportunity analysis. We have probably 50 or 60 or 70 others. So, what is the anatomy of a market opportunity analysis? Well, obviously, we have an introduction, executive summary. That is a complete description of exactly what it is that we're trying to do a market opportunity analysis around, the objectives and the strategy, the opportunities and the profit potential. When we think about a market opportunity analysis, one of the very first things we talk about is the idea. So what is the idea? In some cases, we need to develop new ideas, new ways to take advantage of something that we have, an asset, a capability, or perhaps a skill set that we have. So we usually start with a complete description of the idea, problem, or opportunity. We look at the goals or the purpose of the whole thing. We look at the big idea, the competitive advantage, unique selling proposition. Why would anybody ever decide to use or buy our particular product? And then, of course, at the end of the day, the question is there a reason for customers, for potential customers to become actual customers in our product area, whether it's a service, a good, an experience, an ideology, a thought, whatever it might be. So, market opportunity analyses, when they're done correctly, market opportunity analysis can help companies make better decisions about whether or not to enter markets, expand the new market, or increase revenues and market share. It can also help them to understand the competition and identify potential opportunities and threats. Doing a market opportunity analysis can also help companies clarify their strengths and weaknesses and improve their decision-making process. So when we might be exploring new market entries, perhaps moving into a smaller segment or market for a product. We've had success for a product on the west side of town. Maybe we need to look at moving over to the east side of town, or maybe we've had success here in Las Vegas. We need to figure out whether or not we can be successful in one of the small communities like Reno or Sparks or Ely or Boulder City or Mesquite. We might be moving to a different type of customer group, maybe moving up market to bigger customers, more affluent customers, and then looking at something called customer centricity, which is identifying who our best and most valuable customers are, and then figuring out a way to do a better job of meeting their wants and needs so that we do not lose those valuable customers. This is very much, of course, what the casinos do when they have a well-known gambler who comes and gambles there all the time. They want to make sure that they focus on that customer and don't lose that customer to a different casino. We might do a new market entry when we're looking at new geographies, such as new regions and countries. As you recall, last winter the Midwest had an extremely cold winter, and some of the EVs, the electric cars, struggled to remain operable in that particular type of climate. That's something that probably we hadn't really thought about as much, and of course we don't think about it much down here in Las Vegas. But if you're living in northern Minnesota, that becomes a big issue. We might be talking about just entering completely new product categories. Right now there is a rush to provide pickup trucks that are EVs, for example. Well, that's a market that potentially could be as lucrative as the traditional pickup truck market, but we need to figure out how to best enter that marketplace with an EV. And then serving customers in new verticals, that is, in new kinds of markets that are vertical to the markets that we currently have. That is, either moving up the supply chain or moving down the supply chain to look at those customers and whether or not we should vertically integrate our business. When exploring different types of growth, the people, one of the approaches that is used is this concept of 4 types of growth strategies, and one is a market penetration strategy, one's a product development, one's a diversification, and one's a concentration. Now, I've seen that, and while I think that this is okay, I prefer to use what's called a traditional growth opportunity matrix when we look at potential new sources of revenue. And so I look at existing markets, that is, existing customers with existing products, and doing a better job of marketing and meeting their wants and needs. Those are all called penetration strategies. If we have existing customers, but we want to produce new products for them, we call that a new product development strategy. That is, we understand the customers, we understand their wants and needs, and our goal is to develop new products that will attract a larger share of those customers. Another approach would be taking our existing products and moving into new markets with them. Sometimes this involves going to foreign countries to market our product. Sometimes it's to different geographic areas. Someone like In-N-Out Burger, which is franchised west of the Mississippi, might be thinking about franchising east of the Mississippi. That is, it's an existing product with what? New markets. That's called a new market development strategy. And then there's a diversification. Diversification is when we take new products that we're not familiar with, and we couple them with new markets. That is, customers that we're not familiar with. This, of course, is the most risky approach to developing new products and looking at marketing opportunities. It can also potentially be the most lucrative. Um, but once again, it is a matter of us going into places that we don't necessarily have any experience in this particular product category, and we don't have any specific knowledge of these customer groups. And so in these cases, we really need to do a very specific and very comprehensive market opportunity analysis. There are three basic strategies that I always talk about with companies needed to grow a business. So if I'm trying to grow my business, there are only three things at the end of the day that we need to do. Either we need to increase our number of customers, and we can do that lots of ways, right? We can do that with a market development strategy by going into new markets. We can do it with a product development strategy by developing new products for our current customers, or we can do it with a diversification strategy. But one basic strategy to grow our business would be to increase the number of customers. A second would be to increase the average transaction amount. That is, keep the same number of customers, but do what? Have each customer spend more money. So if everybody spends more money, then I still increase my revenues and grow a business. And then, of course, the third approach is to increase the frequency of repurchase. So there are three ways for me to build my business: get more customers, get customers to buy more often, or increase their average purchase check size. Now, there are different types of market opportunity analysis, and so there are a number of different ways we might analyze a market. But four tools that we tend to see used all the time in market opportunity analysis includes market sizing, which is identifying how big the market is and how that market might be broken down. So this is more of a customer related issue. Then there's a competitive analysis, that is trying to figure out what our competitive advantage or unique selling proposition is. And this, of course, involves that competitor analysis. And then, of course, the SWOT and Porter's five competitive forces involves the industry analysis. So when we're doing a market opportunity analysis, there are a number of tools that we tend to use very often. But once again, the particular exact steps and process and tools that we use can vary dramatically from one MOA to another. Factors that impact our market opportunity analysis is the industry itself, obviously, right? It is easier to grow a business in a fast growing marketplace than in one that is shrinking. We also need to factor in the competition. If the competition is extremely competitive and there's a lot of competitive rivalry, perhaps that's not the best place for us to look for a market opportunity. We need to identify the customers in the market, things like price sensitivity, how many total customers are there, and what are the likelihood of customers switching from someone else's products to ours. The firm itself and its strengths and weaknesses, of course, we refer to that as an internal analysis. And then there's the macro environment, all those other things that can influence how successful we are. So those are obviously the five factors, and we've already covered those in our class. So in summary, The market opportunity analysis um, is designed to look at a very specific potential opportunity or potential threat, analyze it, and then determine what is the best way to proceed. And that, of course, is how we then tie the MOA to the strategy. The strategy is the best way to proceed after we have completely evaluated the market opportunity analysis.